What if I told you that a hidden force is silently orchestrating your entire life, your relationship patterns, career choices, emotional reactions, and even your self-sabotaging behaviors? Carl Jung, the revolutionary Swiss psychiatrist, discovered this invisible psychological mechanism that operates beneath your conscious awareness, yet determines nearly every aspect of your existence. This powerful pattern creates an alternate reality filter through which you perceive the world not as it truly is, but as a projection of your own unacknowledged internal landscape. Most people live their entire lives never recognizing this unconscious force, remaining trapped in recurring painful situations they believe are happening to them rather than emerging from within. Jung called this phenomenon shadow projection, a psychological blind spot where denied aspects of yourself are unconsciously projected onto others, creating distortions in perception that feel absolutely real. The shadow contains not just negative traits, but often your most vibrant qualities: creativity, power, authentic expression, aspects society or family conditioning taught you to suppress for acceptance and approval. The shadow's power lies precisely in its hiddenness, operating beyond conscious detection while determining your attractions, triggering intense emotional reactions, and creating relationship dynamics that mysteriously repeat despite your best intentions to choose differently. Jung's profound insight that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, reveals why many people feel victims of circumstance rather than creators of their experience. This unconscious projection mechanism explains why the qualities that most irritate you in others invariably reveal disowned aspects of yourself, seeking recognition and integration. The remarkable news is that shadow integration offers a pathway to psychological freedom, an authentic power beyond anything most personal development approaches provide. By learning to recognize and reclaim these projected aspects, you liberate tremendous psychic energy, previously wasted on repression and defense. This integration process doesn't require years of therapy, but specific practical techniques Jung developed that anyone can apply. The journey involves courage to face uncomfortable truths, yet rewards you with expanded consciousness, genuine self-knowledge, and the profound liberation that comes from finally becoming the author of your life story rather than its unwitting character. Carl Jung discovered that our minds operate through a mechanism he called shadow projection, a powerful unconscious pattern that shapes our relationships, decisions, and emotional reactions without our awareness. This psychological phenomenon occurs when we unconsciously project the disowned parts of ourselves onto others, creating a distorted lens through which we view the world. The shadow contains all aspects of ourselves we've denied and repressed because they don't fit with our conscious self-image or societal expectations. These projections create an invisible prison in which we react to others not as they truly are, but as carriers of our unacknowledged traits. When you find yourself experiencing an intense emotional reaction to someone, whether intense attraction, repulsion, or irritation, Jung would suggest you're encountering your shadow. These moments reveal not just information about the other person, but crucial insights about yourself that your conscious mind has been carefully avoiding through sophisticated psychological defense mechanisms. The shadow's power lies in its hiddenness, operating below the threshold of consciousness, where it can manipulate your perceptions without detection. Jung observed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This insight reveals why many people experience the same painful patterns repeatedly throughout life. The shadow creates recurring situations that feel externally imposed but actually emerge from within, manifesting through synchronistic events that seem beyond our control. The unconscious mind communicates through symbols, dreams, and emotional reactions, sending messages through seemingly random events that follow an invisible pattern. As you begin to recognize these shadow projections, you'll notice how they've shaped your attraction to certain people, your career choices, and even your deepest fears. The shadow doesn't just influence small decisions, but orchestrates the entire trajectory of your existence, guiding you toward experiences that force confrontation with these denied aspects of self. The formation of your shadow begins in early childhood, when you first learn which aspects of yourself are acceptable and which must be hidden. Parents, teachers, and society create conditions of worth, teaching you to suppress certain natural impulses and emotions to maintain connection and approval. This process of shadow formation isn't inherently negative. It represents a necessary developmental stage as we learn to function within society. However, the problem emerges when the shadow becomes overgrown with vital aspects of our authentic self. Jung discovered that cultural and religious systems dramatically influence shadow formation, creating collective patterns of repression that define entire generations. The shadow contains not just negative traits like anger or selfishness, but often our most vibrant qualities: creativity, spiritual power, sexual energy, and authentic expression. Many people walk through life feeling inexplicably diminished because their most vital qualities have been banished to the shadow realm through early conditioning and spiritual manipulation designed to create compliant, predictable individuals. The shadow operates through a fascinating energetic paradox. The more you deny an aspect of yourself, the more power it gains in your unconscious mind. This explains why those who most vehemently condemn certain behaviors often secretly engage in them, creating the psychological phenomenon of the return of the repressed. Your shadow contains tremendous psychic energy that cannot be eliminated through denial. Only transformed through conscious integration and alchemical transformation that transmutes these energies into higher expressions. Your personal shadow connects to deeper archetypal energies that transcend individual experience, linking to the collective unconscious described by Jung. This vast reservoir of universal human experience contains ancient wisdom and forbidden spiritual knowledge that organized systems have often suppressed. Through shadow work, you not only heal personal wounds, but tap into this field of metaphysical truth and cosmic energy flow that exists beyond conventional reality, connecting you to multidimensional aspects of consciousness. Unrecognized shadow. Projections create a distorted reality filter that dramatically impacts every relationship in your life. Jung observed that we rarely see others as they truly are. Instead, we project our internal images onto them, interacting with these projections, rather than the actual person. This explains why initial attractions often fade as the projection dissolves, revealing the real person beneath. These unconscious projections particularly dominate romantic relationships, where partners become carriers for our unintegrated anima or animus archetypes. When shadow projections remain unconscious, they activate a psychological mechanism Jung called possession, where disowned aspects completely overtake conscious functioning. During these episodes, rational thought disappears as the shadow emerges with volcanic intensity that feels uncontrollable. The person possessed by their shadow often experiences amnesia about their behavior afterward, creating the eerie sensation of not feeling like myself. This possession phenomenon explains instances of otherwise reasonable people engaging in shocking acts of violence, betrayal, or self-sabotage that seem entirely out of character. The most dangerous projections involve the golden shadow, where we project our own brilliance, creativity, and power onto external authority figures, spiritual leaders, or intimate partners. By locating these qualities outside ourselves, we create dependency relationships while denying our own divine resonance and universal consciousness. This projection fuels most cult dynamics, abusive relationships, and addictive patterns where individuals surrender their sovereignty to external sources. The unconscious self-rejection creates an inner void that demands constant external validation. Jung discovered that collective shadow projections fuel societal conflicts, where entire groups project their disowned qualities onto convenient enemies. This psychological mechanism explains how normally peaceful communities can participate in atrocities when gripped by mass shadow possession. The antidote involves recognizing how easily we assign blame outward rather than examining our own darkness. When you feel righteous judgment toward others, Jung would suggest you're witnessing your own shadow material, cleverly disguised as moral superiority, to avoid the painful work of self-examination and spiritual transformation. One telltale sign of shadow control appears through emotional triggers, moments when your reaction far exceeds what the situation warrants. Jung identified these disproportionate responses as clear indicators of shadow material being activated. When someone's behavior produces intense irritation, disgust, or judgment within you, the shadow is using this emotional energy to communicate important information about your unconscious mind. These triggers represent doorways to self-knowledge. If you can resist the urge to blame others and instead turn your attention inward with genuine curiosity about what's being activated within your own psyche. Dreams provide another critical window into shadow dynamics, often presenting symbolic representations of your disowned aspects. Jung observed that recurring dreams particularly reflect unintegrated shadow material seeking acknowledgement and integration through the universal language of symbols. Pay special attention to dream figures that frighten or disgust you, as they typically embody aspects of yourself seeking recognition. The unconscious mind communicates through this vibrational language of imagery and energy frequency, creating a sacred connection between your conscious self and the deeper dimensions of your psyche. Physical symptoms often manifest as embodied expressions of shadow energy that cannot find conscious outlet. Jung noted the connection between repressed shadow material and various forms of illness or chronic pain. The body speaks what the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge, creating somatic expressions of psychological content. This mind-body connection reveals why genuine psychological integration often produces remarkable physical healing that conventional medicine might label spontaneous remission without recognizing the profound inner alchemy that precipitated the transformation through energetic healing and spiritual technology. Relationship patterns provide perhaps the clearest evidence of shadow control, particularly through the psychological mechanism Jung termed repetition compulsion. When you repeatedly attract the same type of partner or experience identical relationship dynamics, despite conscious intentions to choose differently, you're witnessing the shadow's orchestration. The unconscious mind creates these patterns not to punish you, but to present opportunities for healing through the powerful mirror of relationship. What triggers you in others reveals precisely what awaits integration within yourself, a profound insight that transforms blame into opportunity for genuine soul growth and spiritual liberation. Most people dramatically overestimate their level of self-awareness, creating what Jung called the most common form of self-deception. This illusion of self-knowledge creates a psychological blind spot, where we believe we understand our motivations while remaining oblivious to the unconscious forces actually driving our behavior. Jung discovered that the conscious mind represents only a small fraction of our total psyche, like the visible portion of an iceberg floating above water, while the vast majority remains hidden beneath the surface in the mysterious realm of the unconscious, operating through invisible dimensions beyond rational comprehension. The ego creates sophisticated defense mechanisms that actively resist genuine self-knowledge, protecting itself from uncomfortable truths that might disrupt its carefully constructed self-image. This psychological self-preservation explains why even intelligent, introspective people often remain blind to patterns obvious to others. The ego's primary function involves maintaining psychological stability and consistency, even when this means distorting reality through denial, rationalization, and projection. This creates a profound paradox. The more certain you feel about your self-understanding, the more likely you're experiencing the illusion rather than authentic insight. Modern psychology has validated Jung's observations through studies demonstrating how easily we confabulate explanations for our behavior without accessing our true motivations. Experiments reveal that people confidently explain choices actually determined by factors outside their awareness, creating post hoc rationalizations that feel convincing but miss the actual causal mechanisms. This research confirms Jung's radical proposition that consciousness primarily rationalizes decisions already made unconsciously through ancient neural pathways that bypass conscious awareness, operating through quantum spirituality and etheric connections beyond conventional measurement. The path to genuine self-knowledge requires developing what Jung called the objective psyche, the capacity to observe yourself with the same detachment you might observe another person. This psychological distance creates space for authentic insight into shadow material without triggering defensive reactions. Through practices like active imagination, dream analysis, and symbolic exploration, you can gradually expand conscious awareness to include more of your total psyche. The process involves great courage, as you must willingly examine aspects of yourself that contradict your preferred self-image and challenge fundamental assumptions about who you believe yourself to be. Jung discovered that integrating the shadow requires a paradoxical approach, not elimination of unwanted aspects, but conscious relationship with them. This process begins with the radical acceptance that everything you judge in others exists within yourself in some form or capacity. Shadow integration doesn't mean acting out negative impulses, but acknowledging their existence within your psyche without judgment or suppression. This acceptance initiates an alchemical transformation where shadow energies naturally evolve into their higher expressions through the simple act of bringing consciousness to what was previously unconscious. The integration process involves specific psychological techniques Jung developed, including active imagination, a method of dialoguing with shadow aspects as autonomous personalities. Through this practice, you establish conscious relationship with disowned parts of yourself, reducing their power to operate autonomously. When approached with compassion rather than judgment, these shadow elements often reveal surprising wisdom and gifts previously unavailable to your conscious self. What appears destructive in its repressed form often contains vital energy essential for creativity, boundaries, and authentic expression when properly integrated. Dreams provide another powerful pathway for shadow integration, serving as natural bridges between conscious and unconscious realms. Jung observed that recurring dreams often present symbolic material seeking integration, offering metaphorical representations of internal conflicts requiring resolution. By working with dream imagery through amplification and association rather than rigid interpretation, you allow the unconscious to communicate its wisdom through its native language of symbols and archetypes. This dream work creates energetic portals between dimensions of consciousness, facilitating exchange between ordinary awareness and the mystical realms of the collective unconscious. True shadow integration produces a phenomenon Jung called enantiodromia, the tendency for any extreme position to eventually transform into its opposite. Through this process, what began as a destructive force becomes constructive. What appeared as a liability reveals itself as an asset. This psychological transmutation explains why properly integrated shadow aspects often become your greatest strengths and sources of power. The energy previously expended maintaining repression becomes available for creative expression and spiritual development, creating a profound expansion of consciousness and personal freedom through this divine resonance with previously rejected aspects of self. Jung termed the lifelong process of psychological development individuation, the gradual integration of unconscious material into consciousness to become your authentic whole self. This journey differs fundamentally from popular self-improvement approaches focused on eliminating negative traits. Instead, individuation involves embracing the full spectrum of human experience, including shadow aspects, to achieve psychological completeness. This sacred inner journey requires confronting personal and collective shadow material through a courageous descent into the underworld of the psyche, similar to the hero's journey described in mythological traditions across cultures. The individuation process follows distinct phases, beginning with the persona dissolution, where you recognize and release the social masks adopted to gain approval. This initial phase often triggers identity crisis as familiar self-concepts dissolve, creating profound disorientation. Jung observed that this dismantling phase typically emerges during midlife transitions, when external achievement no longer provides meaningful fulfillment. The psyche naturally initiates this process through dreams, synchronicities, and relationship catalysts that destabilize outgrown identity structures to create space for authentic emergence through spiritual awakening. Shadow confrontation forms the central challenge of individuation, requiring sustained willingness to examine projection patterns and reclaim disowned aspects. This process often involves periods of intense psychological discomfort as repressed material surfaces into consciousness. Jung noted that properly navigated, these dark nights of the soul ultimately produce expanded awareness and psychological resilience. During this phase, previously unconscious complexes gradually lose their autonomous power as they become integrated into the total personality structure through conscious relationship and alchemical transformation that transmutes lower energies into their higher expressions. The final phases of individuation involve archetypal integration, particularly the anima-animus, contrasexual archetypes, and ultimately the self archetype, representing wholeness and divine connection. Jung observed that few individuals complete this process within a single lifetime, as it requires extraordinary psychological development and spiritual maturity. Those approaching completion often exhibit remarkable characteristics: profound compassion, reduced projection, authentic expression, creative power, and capacity to hold paradox without needing resolution. This integration connects individual consciousness with universal consciousness, creating access to suppressed wisdom and metaphysical truth beyond conventional understanding. Jung emphasized that shadow integration requires moving beyond intellectual understanding into embodied practice. The journey begins with cultivating radical honesty about your emotional reactions, particularly when you feel triggered by others. Instead of justifying these reactions, ask yourself, what quality in this person disturbs me, and how might that same quality exist within me in some form? This self-inquiry practice gradually reveals projection patterns, allowing you to recognize when you're reacting to your own disowned material rather than the actual person before you. This visualization technique creates a powerful energetic shift in perception. Journaling provides another essential tool for shadow work, particularly through a practice Jung called active imagination. This technique involves dialoguing with different aspects of your psyche as autonomous personalities. Begin by identifying a challenging emotion or behavior pattern, then visualize it as a character with whom you can converse. Write both sides of the dialogue, allowing the shadow aspect to speak freely without censorship. This practice gradually integrates unconscious material by establishing conscious relationship with previously disowned aspects, creating a profound healing through authentic inner connection and spiritual technology that transforms energy frequency. Dream analysis offers perhaps the most direct path to shadow material, as dreams naturally communicate unconscious content through symbolic imagery. Keep a dream journal beside your bed and record dreams immediately upon waking, before the conscious mind can rationalize or forget them. Look particularly for recurring themes, disturbing figures, or situations that provoke strong emotion. Rather than interpreting dreams literally, explore their emotional resonance and symbolic meaning. Jung observed that regular dream work gradually builds a bridge between conscious and unconscious realms, creating an ongoing dialogue that facilitates integration and expansion of awareness. Meditation cultivates the witnessing consciousness necessary for shadow work by strengthening your capacity to observe thoughts and emotions without identification. This practice develops what Jung termed the objective psyche, the ability to witness your reactions with detachment rather than being consumed by them. Begin with simple breath awareness for 5 minutes daily, gradually extending the duration as your capacity strengthens. As meditation deepens, you'll develop increased ability to recognize projection in real time, interrupting automatic reactions before they control your behavior. This practice ultimately creates spiritual liberation from unconscious patterns that previously dictated your experience through invisible realms of influence. As we've explored throughout this journey into Carl Jung's profound understanding of the shadow, we can now see how this unconscious thought pattern shapes virtually every aspect of our lives. The shadow projection mechanism creates the recurring patterns that have mystified you. the emotional triggers that have controlled you, and the relationship dynamics that have confounded you. By beginning the courageous work of shadow integration, recognizing your projections, reclaiming disowned aspects, and bringing consciousness to what was previously unconscious, you initiate a profound transformation that liberates you from these invisible psychological chains. Remember that shadow work isn't about eliminating parts of yourself, but embracing the full spectrum of your humanity. The very qualities you've judged most harshly in others and yourself often contain tremendous gifts when consciously integrated. Your anger transforms into healthy boundaries, your selfishness into necessary self-care, your wildness into authentic, creative expression. This psychological alchemy doesn't happen overnight, but unfolds gradually as you practice the techniques we've explored, from projection recognition to active imagination, dream work to meditation, creating an expanding spiral of self-awareness and personal freedom. The individuation journey Jung described represents the ultimate path to psychological maturity and spiritual awakening. As you continue this work, you'll experience fewer emotional hijackings, greater choice in your responses, and increased capacity to see others as they truly are rather than as carriers of your projections. You'll find yourself less controlled by unconscious patterns and more able to consciously create the life and relationships you desire. This is the profound gift of shadow integration, authentic power that emerges not from denying aspects of yourself, but from embracing your wholeness. I invite you to subscribe to this channel for more insights into Jung's revolutionary psychology and practical techniques for expanding consciousness. Share in the comments which part of this exploration resonated most deeply with you or surprised you. Your insights might illuminate the path for others on this same journey. And be sure to watch our next video appearing on your screen now, where we'll explore Jung's fascinating work with synchronicity and how these meaningful coincidences reveal the hidden connection between your inner psychological state and external reality.